Gal.
Hey guys, Will here. Welcome to Kunai. I am joined here today, as always, with Bish. What's going on, Bish?
Hey, what's up?
Today we're going to be talking about Chivalry of a Failed Knight, or I'm so afraid I'm going to butcher the Japanese.落第騎士の英雄譚.
That's
a
quite
tale
good.
of the worst one.
It's interesting.
I tried.
They call it a tale of the worst one, and the English is completely different than the Japanese. I don't know why that is.
There's several shows we were talking about that. So I actually had a challenge at school where I put up pictures of some of my favorite anime with small whiteboards that students could write on underneath. And like I removed all the either Japanese or English names of the different anime. And the challenge was the students had to try to like guess the name of said anime. And like if they get it right, they got a poster of that anime.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they still haven't gotten all of them. So I put up a total of 10 pictures and there's still like 3 left that they haven't gotten right.
Which ones did you put up? I'm really curious about this now.
Bison Wolf, Case Closed, which is Detective Conan, but in America it's called Case Closed. Uzaki-chan, Woltakoi.
Okay.
Let's see, Recovery of an MMO Junkie. I tried to put a couple easy ones in there, so I put up Demon Slayer. I'm trying to think what all I put up there. Hang on, let me just do it. So Bison Wolf, Demon Slayer, Case Closed, Woltakoi, Recovery of an MMO Junkie, Uzaki-chan. I wanted to throw like a curveball in there too, so like everyone knows Tensura, but like the English name is like really long. You know, that time I was reincarnated as a slime, so I put that one up there. I'm missing, I think, 2 more. What did I put up there? Oh my gosh. I'm trying to remember now. I'm brain farting. I can't remember right now. I should have taken a picture. Kaguya-sama.
Okay.
Another one to put up there. Because a lot of kids at school where I teach really like Oshinokoi, and some also like Kaguya-sama. But the whole English name is Kaguya-sama Love is War. So like some students kept trying to just write Kaguya-sama, Kaguya-sama. I'm like, no. I said there's more to it.
How do you expect them to know about the English names fully, though? 'Cause they wouldn't know about that.
I told them there's no rules.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, what do you mean there's no rules? I'm like, you can use whatever means necessary. And what I mean by that is so every student in the school has a Chromebook.
Okay.
So I'm like, you have Google right there. I didn't tell them that. I said, but you can use whatever you want. Talk to your friends, see what they're doing, you know?
Okay, fair enough. I mean, you made it easy enough for them, and, you know, they didn't use their minds on that one. But it's interesting, though, because was there any ones that sort of they didn't get at all?
So one student got super close with Tensura, and she kept getting mad at me because I kept telling her it was wrong. And she was like, tell me what's wrong, tell me what's wrong. I said, I can't tell you what's wrong.
Okay, so
it was because instead of writing reincarnated, she kept writing reincarnated.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I mean, the fact that she got it pretty much right, I would have given it.
And some students are like insisting that Case Closed is called Detective Conan. I'm like, no, in America it's called Case Closed.
Fair enough. GG to that student that almost got the Tensura one right. Shout out, I guess.
Telling her to try again, she's like, tell me it's wrong. I said, you got 1 romaji wrong, which, you know, romaji means, you know, alphabet. I said, you got 1 romaji wrong. She's like, just tell me. I'm like, I can't.
Did you let her know in the end?
No, I'm still waiting for him to try. So,
okay,
like I said, the ones that they still haven't gotten right are Spice and Wolf, Tensura. Actually, those are the last 2. Those are the last 2 out of the 10 I put up that they haven't gotten right.
GG.
All right, so, but today we are talking about, in English, Chivalry of a Failed Knight.
And before we get into the main topic of discussion, I'm just going to go through the disclaimer. For you new folks, Kunai is a monthly anime discussion podcast under the Gal Network. Due to the nature of discussion, we can't avoid spoilers of the show to be discussed. For those shows that are based off an existing piece of work, whether it's manga, light novel, or some other media form, we're not covering the source material for those. If you'd like to recommend a show for us to watch and make an episode of Kunai, leave a suggestion either on our Discord, getalifepodcast.com/Discord, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can actually leave a comment below. Also, be sure to give us a 5-star rating, whether using Spotify or on iTunes. And big thanks to our sponsors, Crunchyroll and Sugoima. Just worth noting, this anime is available to watch on High Dive. High Dive isn't sponsoring the show, but I just wanted to let you guys know in case you guys wanted to watch this show and join in on the discussion.
So as far as the show goes, this was produced primarily by Silverlink in partnership with Nexus. Obviously, it's licensed by Sentai Filmworks. It originally aired during the fall season of 2015. It is 12 episodes long. It is considered an action, fantasy, romance, and ecchi, but I will say, there are some ecchi parts, but they're kind of tuned down, and this 12-episode first season of the show, and currently only season of the show, is based off of the first 3 volumes of the light novel series. So this is a alternate reality Earth, kind of like how there's multiverse in the Marvel Universe. This is a different reality of our own Earth and everything, where there are people born into the world called Blazers, that basically they have different kind of like elemental powers, I guess you could say, that they use to channel through their various summon weapons. And then this show actually takes place in a school where the Blazers go, for studying and learning, but also how to become better Blazers. Because Blazers in this world, if I recall correctly, are used basically in place of things like military and police. But they don't really get into that as much in the show. The main character, Ikki Kurogane, which I guess we'll just call it Ikki for short, he attends this school, but he is what they call an F ranking, or basically a failed ranking Blazer, because he can't actually manifest his power in a traditional way, but what he does have is really cool. And it's just kind of the challenges that he overcomes both through the battles through the school and the training, and then also on the romantic side of things. So there is a romance element to this as well. It kind of came out at a time when there were several of these kind of like battle high school shows coming out, but to me personally, this is definitely one of the shows that stood out for multiple ways, but we will kind of get into that later. So I want to hear what your first impressions of the show are.
To be honest with you, I didn't know what to think. It's very weird to say that, but I was sort of taken back by the level of etchiness from the very first episode, and it sort of gave me a bad taste in my mouth, because I was thinking, I hope this show isn't all like this. The whole thing where Ikki is literally just taking off his clothes because he's like, oh, Stella, I think, just so you're not embarrassed, I'm gonna also take off my clothes as well. And I'm like, oh, okay, if this show is gonna be like this, I'm just gonna back out right now. I got freaked out from the very beginning.
I will say with that part though, that is one of those things that in my opinion, when you compare it to like I said, some of these other shows that came out at the time, it was kind of subverting expectations, because it was automatically setting up a bit of the comedy aspect of it. And two, every other show that seemed to come out around this time had like similar scenes, and it was always the girl just going off and kicking the MC's character's butt, and getting mad, which Stella does, but at the same time, by him doing that, it did kind of lessen that a bit, and all she really ended up doing was slapping him.
I get it. I mean, back in 2015 when the show came out, there was a lot of other shows that I would say maybe taking it beyond that.
Oh yeah.
I just think I wasn't necessarily used to it, which is weird because I've seen a lot of shows from that era and they all have stuff that is worse, but I think watching it in this sort of modern age, and I wasn't expecting it, because I was thinking, oh, you know what, Chivalry of a Failed Knight, there's going to be fighting, it's going to be a shonen anime, and then that sort of gets slapped in the first episode. I'm like, what the hell's going on? But I think as I was continuing to watch it, you kind of saw less and less of that, and I understand that was kind of there for dramatic effect, and I kind of appreciate it. I was attracted to the show because of the fighting in the first couple episodes, and I think that's just absolutely bloody fantastic. I was like, hell yeah, okay, that's what's going to keep me watching this show, so in that aspect, I really loved it. I will say this, not to slag off High Dive, but when I first watched it, I was on the treadmill. For some reason, when you open High Dive, when you open any new show, at least, I don't know if this is something wrong with my account, but always defaults to English. And I'm like, what the actual fuck is this? The English dub kind of put me off guard as well. But obviously that's not a fault.
I've never heard it, so
it's
I can't
okay.
comment on that.
It's just a bit odd, and they change a lot of the translations, and I'm not a big fan of that. And I've kind of noticed that as well with the subtitling. They do change, like, when they were saying "gambate," Ikki or whatever, they put some weird translations on there. Like Ikki's sister was having that fight, and then instead of saying "gambate," because I can understand that bit in Japanese, it's very simple to understand. They wrote "you go girl," and I'm like, what?
Oh man,
like that doesn't even make any sort of sense. You know what I mean?
No.
And it's not even in the English dub either. So I'm like, where did this translation come from? So there was those kind of elements in it. I feel like if I was to watch this sort of fan subbed, then I don't think I would get that level of aspect to it. And it's very important to mention, because if you're watching a couple of shows of an anime and if the subs aren't good, especially official subs, can put you off a show. But otherwise, I do think my impressions, I really did enjoy the show from the get-go, because of the fighting.
I would like to touch on what you brought up about the writing as well. Apparently, the author of the series, I'm not going to say he was totally hands-on with the show, but he did have some input into it from my understanding as well. And it's one of those shows, like I said, there's things that are touched on in the show that, like, they're little snippets here and there. I guess you could say it's kind of like it's layered, where you get little input about what it's like even outside of the school. They just kind of never really get to that very much during the season, except for like the last few episodes. But even then, that's just like the tip of the iceberg kind of thing. So that's I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm kind of spoiling things here a little bit that it was only the one season. I would love to see more. It's definitely a series I definitely plan to eventually read more about. And I have a few friends that have been reading the series. The series is still ongoing, by the way, too.
It's interesting as well because the people that had the license, they don't exist anymore. They were producing the light novel in English, translating in English up until 2020. And I think they got up to the 5th volume of light novel. And then the company, I think it's called Soul, they didn't pay taxes and they went defunct.
God, but yeah, that's
kind of sucks.
So frustrating too. Yeah, so like my friends that, like I said, have read it, they've obviously been reading it online somehow. It really frustrates me when that happens, just like how we still can't get Gate published in English. It's only like the first 2 volumes will ever be published in English until Sekai Project sells the rights, because they won't just come off the rights.
Yeah, which is kind of annoying. And I think in general, just as like a side bit for the moment, and I think it's obviously very important to talk about, but like it's very, very interesting the way that light novel publishing works, especially because light novels realistically are not going to make as much money compared to a manga, because manga is a visual medium, light novel to a certain degree. But I think the way that light novels are marketed in the West aren't done properly, because they're not being taken up by proper publishers. It's always like the smaller publishers. Obviously, like there are bigger ones that are taken up by 7 Seas and like the bigger companies, like something like Sword Art, right? Because it's super popular. But these smaller ones, obviously they get picked up by independents, and they might not always have the budget, or especially a lot of the time, if they're going to be keeping the rights to an IP or something, they'll keep it just so they can maybe use that to get others, if that makes sense.
Or because they'll hang on to it because since they invested in it, they don't want to let it go for nothing, so they're trying to like sell it, but then it just sits in dormancy for years, and that kills a series, and it drives me insane.
Exactly, and it does kill a series. And part of me would want to see like a big Western publisher like Penguin Books or something just take on light novel. I know that sounds, some people might argue with that and be like, oh, that's horrendous, but I would like to see that, just so more light novels
at least we would
popular,
actually get the books then.
Exactly, and I think that also helps in terms of anime adaptation. I also think that if the creator of this the light novel series, and in fact even the people that were on the production team of the anime, as we mentioned, right, anime is there to sort of hype up and sort of promote the source material, and they tend to do a second season if the source material is selling well. So I do think that's always very like a contributing thing. Like if they don't promote the source material well enough, then, or if they don't make it accessible enough, then there's no way that the anime would succeed even in the second season and stuff like that. We can talk about it a little bit more later on when we discuss second seasons and whatnot.
So are you kind of, that's your take on your first impressions and everything?
Yeah, I will say this as well. Like another thing that it reminded me of is around the same time, especially from Studio Silverlink, we had similar shows, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
First thing that came to my mind was Bucket to Test,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously that is a battle anime, and it's like it has this whole ranking system. Which as soon as I heard, okay, Ikki is F rank, I was like, damn, this is like Bucket to Test. But that's kind of another thing that kind of drew me in. But I think as well, it reminded me of a Chinese series that was airing on Crunchyroll and Funimation a while back. It's called The Daily Life of an Immortal King. I know that's more recent, but
It sounds familiar.
I can't explain what it's about, but it's like a similar sort of battle anime set in a high school. It's pretty recent. I think it came out in 2019. So it makes me think that that series was maybe inspired by this one, because the stories are quite similar.
Okay.
So I think this series has made an impression, because, you know, I'd imagine that this sort of thing is quite unique for the time, because bear in mind, this 2015, right? This sort of thing, as common as it is nowadays, I don't think this genre of anime was common.
Well, so here, just season alone. So you had this show, then you had the Asterisk War, which was like almost the same kind of plot and everything too. So in Chivalry of a Failed Knight, they're going through a tournament of sorts to select the representatives from this school that were going to basically go on to battle in the national tournament against all the other schools like this. It was kind of the same thing in Asterisk War. The characters in that show, have summoned weapons they can use with elemental powers and different, weapon fighting skills and techniques. The main characters also had pink hair with sword and fire ability, just like Stella Vermillion does in Chivalry of a Failed Knight. They were going through a tournament selection committee to find representatives that were going to represent their school in an upcoming tournament, almost like very, very similar plots, and they was airing at the exact same time. Mm-hmm. And then you had another show that was also made by Silverlink at this exact same time, called Anime Academy 35th Test Platoon, which was teenagers basically being trained to fight against other elemental and magic users and things like that. And like one of the main characters in that show, granted, had orange hair, but also used a sword, and they had different elemental abilities and things like that. Like I said, that was another Silverlink show. So like you have 3 shows just in this one season, but then you had like other quasi similar things going on. Like you had Seraph at the End of the World going on. You had Testament of Sister New Devil going on. I'm brain farting here.
I think One Punch was also releasing around that time.
One Punch Man was also going on at this time, which, granted, not the same premise, but still another kind of fighting shonen show. Mm-hmm. There was Lance and Masks, which is a show that most people would forget about because it was awful. Mm-hmm. But, it was, fighting teenagers with weapons, swords, lances, stuff like that. So, I mean, there was just a whole bunch of this kind of stuff going on, just even in this one season, much less the seasons previous and after. So it was just a kind of a glut of it going on at the time. So, like I said, this is definitely one of the shows, in my personal opinion, that stood out.
Okay. It's interesting because I'll be fair with you, I was really big into anime around 2015, and I remember what was coming out that season, and I don't remember this show at all, and I don't remember any sort of hype for it online, if that makes sense.
2 things are, one, like I said, this show was being recommended to me by friends who had already been reading the books. And 2, I love Silverlink. They're actually one of my favorite studios, even though they're very hit or miss with their shows. But I mean, a lot of that comes from, they did the first, I want to say 3 seasons of Strike the Blood before they switched studios. So, which is one of my just all-time favorite guilty pleasure shows. And I was already sold. I will at least try to attempt almost anything that Silverlink makes. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the overall of our first impressions. Well, I mean, I didn't really get deep into mine. So my first impressions obviously are just that, I was already looking forward to it. I thought it stood out. Talked about the whole very first episode interaction, how I thought that kind of subverted some expectations. Obviously, we'll talk about it more at the end, but I love the music from the show. I loved the character designs, the color palettes. But like I said, it pretty much had me from episode 1, but I want to say it was episode 3 or 4 that really sucked me in. So we'll touch on that, I guess, when we get into, our favorite episodes and all that type of stuff, which is kind of where we're going now. So how about you? What were some favorite episodes or moments for you?
I love the episodes in which there was fighting, obviously, which is most of the episodes. But I would say the episodes, I'm trying to remember which one it is exactly, but when Ikki is fighting that guy, I can't remember many of the names, but the guy that does the whole forest thing with the, with the bow and arrow.
Gosh, what was that jerk's name? He ends up being such a minor character in the end. I can't remember his name either. Let me take a look here. I should know this.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
Shizuya Kirihara.
Shizuya. So I'm trying to remember what episode that was.
That was, I want to say that was episode 2.
It was really early
positive.
on. Yeah. It was really early on, and I love that episode because you kind of got to see Ikki sort of using his powers, using his mind. It's the first time where you actually see him, in my opinion, not being shit.
Fourth episode. It's the fourth episode.
You know what I mean? Like, I know he won the battle initially, with Stella and stuff, but that kind of felt like, okay, he needed to do that to sort of set the tone for the anime.
If that hadn't happened, there probably wouldn't have been a rest of the show.
Correct. So you kind of almost expected that, but that battle when he's fighting in that forest, and you got to see just the scenery going around you, because I didn't quite understand how the school operated, if that makes sense, because there is that sort of arena thing going on, and I'm like, okay, is it just a blank arena? Like, what is this anime gonna do to make a blank arena look interesting?
Right, it's blank because it's kind of two things. One, it gives an excuse for them to basically do whatever they want, but two, it's also because of, like I said, all these characters have these different, I don't want to just call them elemental control because it's more than just elements in it, but that's just an easy way to describe it. So it basically lets them take the powers of these characters and do whatever they want with them to change said arena.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting. It reminded me of, and this is kind of weird, the X-Men?
Yep.
Obviously the fact that they have powers and whatnot, but there was that room in the X-Men where they train. I forgot the name of it.
The Danger Room.
That's it. It reminded me of the Danger Room in the X-Men. And I was like, this is kind of badass. And the fact that the scenery is changing around it, of course, characters are changing it because of their powers, right? So it is really interesting. I really like those episodes. The episodes that I didn't quite like, even within the fighting, was just, at the beginning of an episode, I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it was literally like the next episode after that, where you just see Stella win a battle. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. And we don't know who she fought against. The guy was just like falling on the floor, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then it goes into that more slice of life type episode where they go to the beach, and I'm like, okay, I get it, but I want to see more fights. I felt that we didn't get enough fights, and that's why I kind of like those couple of parter episodes. The Sword Eater episode arc was fantastic. Looking at that and just that fight in itself was so good. When he releases Orochimaru, I don't know, like that whole arc where Ayase can't do shit and it's Ikki that has to fight on her behalf, and he's just tearing shit up. I love that kind of stuff, right? I think another episode that sort of stood out in terms of fantastic fighting was just the last episode of the anime. You know what I mean?
And that final episode just makes so many callbacks just to even like the intro in the opening of the show too.
And it's fantastic because it answers a lot of questions as well, because there was a lot of things that I was wondering, like for example in the episode prior where Ikki is going through that whole I don't know if it's like I don't know what the right word is, but it's basically like his incarceration for a couple of days.
He's being interrogated basically, but it was all just a waste time is all it was for.
Exactly. And during those scenes it was all like black and white and shit, and I was like, why is it black and white? And then I realized he's fighting and he's basically, he doesn't have any energy. They probably kept him there. They didn't probably feed him or whatever.
I mean, they were just giving him like the bare minimum and like not giving him any time to rest, no comfort, nothing. He was just like not even in a padded room, just like a single room with nothing.
Exactly. And obviously this guy's just like made to fight and battle after battle after battle. And it was very interesting because that whole scene was like in black and white for the most part, that whole episode. And then I realized, wait a minute, Ikki, when he fights and he uses his special move, I think it's called Itoshura, like when he uses that, everything goes black and white, and he explains it in the beginning that his vision goes black and white so that he can sort of focus on everything. And I'm thinking,
he basically, his thing is he has technically unlimited potential. What he basically does is he sacrifices part of not just his senses, but he sacrifices something that his own body can do to enhance other aspects of his body. So like he can sacrifice his sense of taste, his sense of smell. He can, sacrifice his colors. Like basically he can, use any part of himself to then turn around and enhance something else. So think of it kind of like if you ever watch Star Trek and they're talking about how they will drain power from one part of the ship to enhance another part of the ship. It's kind of like that, just within his own body.
I guess it makes more sense from a visual perspective, because obviously if he was to give up his sense of smell or like, a sense of taste or whatever, you're not really going to see that in terms of an anime, right? The fact that they've done it in such a visual way, and I was thinking, wait, he must be using that Itoshura to win all those battles, especially if he's doing it like again and again, and the fact that he can use it once a day, it kind of...
So that's the whole thing. Here's the thing. So he can use his abilities to enhance himself at any time, but his trump card ability, where he can just go all out for one attack, that's his skill that he can only use once a day.
And it made me think that he was using that skill because everything was like black and white during that time. That's just a speculation on my end. I kind of understand the other reason behind it in terms of like a more cinematography type thing, and it's supposed to be like depressing, and you're supposed to feel that he's getting abused, he's getting, I don't know, like he's basically, even though he's winning, he's fighting an uphill battle, if that makes sense. So it's sort of making the audience feel like that as well. And I loved within that episode that moment where he's going to speak to his dad and then the color changes for a moment. It's almost like, oh, he's getting a bit of hope coming back into him, and then bam, everything, like, it rains blood, right? And he's crying, and it looks like he's crying in blood, and it's just like, that's such a powerful scene, and I think that's one of my favorite moments because of that.
They play so much with color in the show, which is what I was talking about earlier, when I was talking about my first impressions and everything, like, and it's not just with the black and white and the red, which is obviously the predominant stuff, but even during certain fights, but with the characters, like, you notice how their kind of colors of their characters kind of match along with their actual, like, abilities. So, like, you've got, his younger sister, Shizuka, where, she's got the, like, kind of gray and white aesthetics going to her, and her abilities are controlling ice. And then you've got, Stella herself, which, she's pink and red, and, she uses fire and heat. Then you've got oh man, I'm trying to think of the final girl now. They're like top student.
Toka Odo.
Yeah, where, like, her hair is kind of like that, that dirty blonde, and she's got the two long, like, French braid type hair and everything, and she's got the electric ability, things like that. So they play a lot with that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, another sort of favorite battle of mine is, I'm trying to remember her name, and this is the thing, I couldn't quite remember a lot of the characters, but the Ayase battle.
Yeah, Ayase, yeah.
Where she's
really good.
That was a great one because
really good. Yeah.
I didn't expect her to be able to do that, place all these cuts beforehand, and just the fact that she did that little ding, and it was just so impactful, and the fact that you got to see, like, oh man, the way that affected him and the way that Ikki sort of had to go against it, sort of dodge them, I was like, damn, this is insane. Like, the sword play in this anime is just insane. Like, I haven't seen an anime that has taken fights like this to this level. It's almost very well thought out, right? Every move is thought out, every dodge is thought out. It just makes sense.
Well, it even shows with the, like, quote unquote bad guys and, like, kind of a-hole characters, how they're not, necessarily dumb. They even know, like, their own abilities and things like that. It's just that, they make mistakes and they don't account or know the limit of Ikke's abilities when he fights them and things like that. It's like they're no slouches themselves. He figures out how to beat them. Is that it for your like, kind of favorite episodes and moments?
I'd say so, to be fair. What about you?
Obviously, like, the first episode in most anime settings, that's kind of like, an easy reach there and everything. But I'm actually going to say episode 3, I believe it is, when they end up like going shopping to the mall, and Stella and his sister Shizuka are kind of like fighting over him because Shizuka's got that huge brocon shtick with her character, but not just that part, but the whole hostage negotiation situation. And yeah, like, I can understand, like, some people are really uncomfortable with that scene in general just because it's hostages and there's kids involved, and, like, they make Stella strip and all that type of stuff. But that episode, I think, even more than the fight in against Kiriha actually really showed like what Ike was capable of and how he ends up helping to take down the hostages. But not just that, but also how smart both Stella and Shizuka actually are. It just shows how they can all kind of work together. I think kind of foreshadowing what might come down the road, just that unfortunately we never kind of get to it in the anime. So like I said, it was episode 3 I really like episode 5. I think episode 5 is kind of one of the what's the word for it, penultimate episodes of the series.
Penultimate,
because it's like, it's one of those shows where it's like right off the bat kind of have their whole attraction to each other. It doesn't take as long for them to develop a relationship, I guess is what I'm trying to say, as compared to other shows of this. So like I said, by episode 5, you know, they end up arguing with each other because they're unsure if each other actually still likes each other. But then they just come out and they're blunt and honest with each other and admit that they like each other. And from that point on, they're a couple. You know what I mean?
It's very interesting as well, because I've never seen a sort of romance anime in which the characters are very open and honest and are willing to have discussions.
Exactly.
Which I was thrown off by that, because there was that one point where Ikki was getting a lot of attention and stuff from other girls and whatnot. I think it was especially Ayase. Stella was just like, hey, you know, I want to be sort of noticed, you know, don't forget about me, you know, I'm your girlfriend at the end of the day. Like, they actually had an open and honest conversation, which you don't necessarily expect from high schoolers.
Well, I mean, like I said, that goes all the way back to episode 1 after they first meet and they end up getting called into basically like the principal's office and everything. They just have a completely open and honest discussion with what's going on there, and like he just kind of lays everything out and he's like, look, I still want to be her, you know, her roommate and partner. So even though she has the whole brocon thing going on, Shizuka is actually one of my, I won't say favorite, but more liked characters in the show. I still remember back when the show was very first airing, in my little anime group I was talking with, the guys that I was talking with anime then, they kind of called me out because of the fact that I liked so much. And like that episode when they showed that fight with her, and like I don't want to, I mean, we can't avoid spoilers, but she ends up losing to Toto. I was so pissed off. I mean, I knew she was going to lose, but the way that she lost, and it made me really turn against Toto as a character. Toto, I think that's how you say your name.
Yeah.
Because like the few times you even get to like see her in the show, like, you know that she's like the top dog there, you know that she's strong and like apparently she's unbeatable and all stuff. When they show her trump card ability after like Shizuka like went toe to toe with her, like everyone in the stands was watching, talking about what a great fighter she was, how smart she was. I love her weapon skills and her elemental controls. I thought it looked great on screen. And then like she does all of that, and then Tokotoro is just able to just basically use her cheese ability to like one-shot kill anybody, pretty much is the easiest way of saying it, like if you want to put it in video game terms. That just pissed me off because I was like, how are you going to set up, I guess this is a flaw in the writing, as much as I talk about how much I like the writing, it's like, but how are you going to set up this other character, have this great battle between the two of them, and like, you know, when Shizuka really should be part of this whole like team moving forward, and then you knock her out just because this one other fighter just has this one trump card that she can ass pull at any moment. It really irked me.
It is a good point, because Ikki also has a trump card, and that makes him literally can be able to one-shot people if he wanted to. But how is it that you're not really annoyed by his trump card and you are? I think
because with him, I think it's also in the depiction on how it gets to that, because he's still like, even though he's able to beat so many people, he still struggles in his fights, and he takes hits, and he lets himself take hits so he can learn how other people fight. He does it all in a way to where he can better himself. Whereas they never really do anything like that with Toka. He's just like, yeah, I'm the best. I can beat anyone. I've got this trump card. And like I said, and then when they juxtapose that to just, like I said, how much Shizuka, like she goes into the fight knowing it was going to be her most difficult challenge, and how Toka's abilities can almost pretty much offset hers, but she still is able to use her abilities and change them. Like where she goes from using ice to changing everything everything into mist, basically, to kind of like, cut down on the visibility. Like, the girl was just damn smart as a fighter. Meanwhile, Toka is just like, oh, let me ass pull this win. And apparently that's all she's been doing the whole time. You don't really get to see much of her other fights, but the way they describe it throughout the series, it's like that's just her one thing. Like, she has that ability where she can instantly close on anybody anytime and, get that one hit in that instantly makes her win. Whereas, like I said, at least with Ikki, he still has to go through the struggle. He still has to get the timing down. He still has to take hit, and figure out ways to beat people, where she just does the same thing all the time, which, like I said, it's kind of a good thing then that, she loses, so she's not part of the final team going in. But I think knocking out a strong fighter like Shizuka, by comparison, especially after they set her up, up to that point, was just super annoying.
To be fair with you, I think this is kind of a good place to kind of discuss characters, because obviously you've already mentioned it, and I presume, as you mentioned, that your favorite character is
Shizuka?
Yeah, who's your favorite character? Sorry, I just need to know.
Oh, Stella's definitely my favorite character.
So obviously you mentioned Shizuka.
You know me, like normally when we talk about these kind of shows and things like that, if there's ever like a best girl or waifu conversation, I'm usually like the anti, obvious girl type thing. But like Stella from the get-go, yeah, because she's tsundere, which, I love tsundere character, but she's not like your typical tsundere. Like, she's actually able to realize when she makes mistakes, and like she will own up to them. She'll still be standoffish about it, yeah, but she'll own up to them. And like you said, and then the fact she's so open after they're able to become friends and things like that. And she even starts opening up to Shizuka and Ayase too. Like, she wants friends. Like, at the end of the day, even like they set her up as being, well, she's like literally a princess and all that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, she realizes that, she has to overcome her own attitude and, and thoughts about herself if she really wants to, make friends. And like I said, the fact that even like Shizuka is so, like, for lack of better words, bitchy towards her, but she still keeps confiding in her and talking with her about Ikki, even knowing that his own sister is like in love with him. So I don't know, like I said, it's another one of those things that in a series like this that goes against the grain. So that's why I really like Stella. Plus, I'm just gonna say it, she's hot.
Okay. All right. It's interesting because you know who my best girl is?
Ayase?
No. You'd be surprised.
Don't tell me Toka.
It's a teacher. It's actually.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and say it.
No. You guess. I want to know.
Well, I mean, the only other one that I can really think of is Yuri.
Yes, it's Yuri Sensei.
Oh my God, she's hilarious.
I love
so
her.
Good.
That's why
I get it. I get it.
She's best girl, and I think as well. I think it's just because the way that she is as a teacher, like she puts on this sort of brave face, and she's like, "Everyone call me Yuri-chan," like, and obviously she's like spitting out blood and shit, and she's clearly doing it to sort of lower the tension of her classroom, like just to sort of diffuse from the fact that she is dying. There's so much I want to know about her, and she's just so nice, and her voice is just amazing. I don't know, she's just a funny character, and I think for me she is best girl just because of that. In terms of like my favorite character, I would say I am quite a big fan of Ikki, as it makes sense because he's just he's the main character. I'm not too much.
It's not. I just gotta interrupt you for
this.
Sure. It's not just that he's the main character, but like going back to the fact that he's a main character that he's very fleshed out.
Yeah.
Easy way to say it. He's just very fleshed
out, and yet he still has growth.
Exactly.
Which is very unlikely. I mean, like in a lot of anime, especially like these sort of battle animes, it's very unlikely for these characters to still find room for growth, and he's very vulnerable. There's a lot of things that he's trying to work out, especially with his dad and his whole family trauma and stuff like that, and you really get to sort of open up with him, and you understand his struggles, and you understand what makes him tick. And I think that as a character is just excellent, and you don't really see that as much in anime, at least at that time. And yeah, the anime is funny at times, but when it wants to be serious, they kind of use him as that vehicle to sort of be serious, and I like that.
And it's good because he even earns respect of people he fights against too.
Yeah, 100%. And that's very clear towards the end when he has that fight with Todo, and you see the people that he's fought before cheering him on. Even that douchebag that won the dojo, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but even he was outside sort of trying to figure out what was going on, and he's not cheering him on, but he's still trying to figure out, he's still trying to look in almost and see, okay, I'm here because I want him to win, because I'm going to fight him again the tournament, hopefully, probably. I would say he would be my favorite character. I love the rest of the cast of characters, although there are some characters that I feel are not needed as much. Alice being one of them. I don't think he drives...
By the way, the guy you were talking about is it's difficult for me to pronounce his name, but it's Kurashiki Kuraudo. You're talking about the guy nicknamed the Sword Eater that had the like, kind of bone-looking chain sword. Yeah. One
character that I didn't quite like was Alice.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought she was a bit
interesting.
Weird. Like, not necessarily weird, but I think she didn't... She kind of drove the story. Like, I didn't see many of the fights that was going on. I didn't see her potential. I didn't see her real need. Like, she drove the story in a sense for more so for like Shizuku in terms of like emotional support. But I wanted to see more because I think she's like a rank C or something. Like, she is quite a high rank, and we barely got to see any sort of combat from her. And I was like, oh man, like, come on.
And it always seemed like there was, there was so much more to her / him. I can't, it's funny because in, like, descriptions from, like, the books and stuff, they say him, but he goes by her.
Yeah.
So I have a difficult time knowing which to say based on that. But yeah, we'll say her and she, because that's what, they go by in the story. But like, it's one of those things that like I said, that's why I wish we got more, because you could tell there's so much more there with that character.
Exactly.
And how like they're so secretive, and like even the ability is like her trump card is like shadow bind, which what does that make you think of? Basically like hold someone in place. And like their actual like weapon, they call them devices, called darkness hermit. So they're all about shadows, living in the shadows, doing things from the shadows. So there's something more there, but we never get that in the anime.
I mean, we did get to see it initially when she uses it against
slightly.
Ikki. And then we're like, okay, there's something going on. She explains what she has and her device and everything. But I'm like, okay, cool, then show us more. We want to see more. But we didn't get the opportunity.
I just mean as far as that whole darkness living in the shadows and how it seems like she just pops up out of nowhere sometimes too.
Which, I mean, it's interesting, but there's so many issues with that sort of characters. And I might think it's because they introduced too many characters into the show at once. At least in a 12-episode anime, that might be the concern.
These 12 episodes only cover the first 3 volumes of the book, and there's currently 18 volumes out, so we're literally just getting the tip.
I'm quite curious. I'm gonna check. So you said it covered 3 volumes. By by the point that the manga, not the manga, by the point that the anime was released, there was 8 volumes. So I presume, to me, like, even for 3 volumes, I get it. That's enough source material for one season of anime for 3 volumes. It makes sense because a lot of anime use almost less light novel. I feel like there was a lot of bits missing, and I think that the fact that there was just so many characters, I was left wanting more, because even the other teachers, right, the director, I forgot that other teacher that has the clogs, what is her name?
Nene.
Exactly, Nene sensei. Like,
yeah, and apparently like she's one of the most like powerful fighters there is around too, but again, you never get to see it. You just get to see her antics as being an adult lolly.
Exactly, and I think also the fact that she's flirting with students, and it's like, okay, she's almost a joke, you know what I mean? Which she isn't, because you see her sensei there anyway in the final episode, and you see a lot of other things, and you see obviously the fact that she uses the same techniques as Todo, and the fact that she's more experienced because she's been using those techniques for longer. It makes you think, fucking hell, she could have the ability to fuck shit up, but we don't see it. So there's just a lot of other things, and like I said, the fact that I keep on forgetting the names of characters in the show, it's just because they don't get enough screen time, or they don't get enough development, and I'm like, really, should I care about them as much other than the main cast of characters? Obviously Alice does get a pass because Alice does drive some level of story development, but for the main part,
well, that's like we get more into I think her name is Kagami, the girl who basically wants to be a reporter.
Yeah.
And she has like a little bit of a crush on Ike too. Like we get more about her than we really do of even like Toka or like the other members of the student council, like the kind of like Shota boy that like even pops up when they're in the restaurant scene. Like, you know, he's another one like that kind of reminded me a bit of Alice. Kind of pops up and like he definitely is stronger than his outward appearance, but that's really all we get of him.
You know what you know who he reminds me of? Honey Senpai from Oran High School Host Club. I know
you're right. No,
it's so
I see
dumb, but
he
does remind me of that a lot. And I'm like, oh my god, this guy is Honey.
Well, like I said, and this is just, you know, I mean, it's granted the point of these anime are to get you to eventually buy their source material, which I want to do, but then again, going back to how we were talking earlier, you can only even get in English the first 5 volumes, so it's like, what's the point?
It's interesting as well because it's a lot of anime kind of go through this, and we had a similar discussion on Rail Wars as well. Like, we do want to get involved in the story, but there's no source material, and there's not going to be a second season, unfortunately.
It's so frustrating too, as you know, a fan of all this content. It's like we will give you money, just make this stuff.
And it's a bit of a weird one in this case because it was getting made and then the company decided not to pay taxes, so it's like who now owns that IP? Like,
I remember too that after this and Asterix, because even though Asterix 4 kind of got poo-pooed on by a lot of people in the anime community, it still blew up. It was still really popular and the books started selling for it too. And I remember that in like 2017, both of these shows were announced to have like second seasons in like pre-production, and then they just died. And I'm guessing it has something to do with like maybe the English rights being lost. I'll have to look into Asterix work to see what happened with that. But I definitely remember both of these shows were being announced as getting second seasons, and it just never happened.
It's interesting as well because in terms of licensing, because this was a show that was being originally sort of simulcast on Crunchyroll / Funimation at the time, and then now it's on High Dive because Sentai was taking back a lot of their shows. It's interesting because High Dive did provide an English dub recently, and they did a lot of dubs during COVID, which I'm not sure if this was one of them because during COVID that's when they started taking a lot of their shows on. So I don't know if, like, for me it makes me curious, like, why would High Dive create an English dub for a show that's almost at this point more than 5 years old? Do they want to maybe see some level of hype being generated by it? Maybe they're testing out the waters, because I think if you can sort of prove that the show is making money, especially in the English community, then you could probably go back to the original creators and say, actually, I think that there might be some level of season 2 and we could help fund it. Because obviously Crunchyroll is doing that now with a lot of anime. They're helping to fund. And I think High Dive, in collaboration with Sentai, they could also help to fund second seasons for like exclusives and stuff. Because at the moment, this is exclusively on High Dive, and I can see that working out. I don't know if that's High Dive's initiative, but it would be really cool to see. Honestly, I'm sorry to sort of jump the bullet, but I would like to see a second season of the show.
No, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm sure you can kind of gather that how I've, you know, been talking about how I want more. That's fine to jump the bullet on. So, any other characters or anything that you would like to bring up?
No, not really. I think I had basically mentioned my piece with the characters. There's just that issue in terms of not enough episodes to give the characters enough development. If this was a 24 episode anime, then yeah, definitely I think we could have seen a lot more from the characters. We could have seen a lot more from Alice, for example, because she did go through battles. Like, there was certain things, it just feels like a lot of the battles were just Ikki and his opponents, or Stella and her opponents, right? It wasn't really anything groundbreaking because there was like 7 students that were chosen to win, but we only got to see battles from like 2 or 3 of them.
So just while we've been sitting here talking, I had to look into it. So just another thing to kind of irk me is Asterix War finished its light novel run in June of last year, and then just this past month the final volume was published in English, so it got the full run in English, of course, because it was done by Yen Press, which is, you know,
a bigger company,
a bigger publication. Yeah. Oh god, it's so frustrating. But so were you saying then at the end that Yuri is also your best girl, or is she just your favorite character?
So my favorite character would have been Ikki. I would say Yuri is my best girl. Obviously, the best girl on Kunai has always been like a sort of joke debate, but I would say that Yuri is my best girl.
I wouldn't argue with it. She's great. Everything obviously went over, you know. Stella's kind of both for me, but I really like Ike, and obviously I like Shizuka too. So there's so many. That's like I said, so frustrating because there's several characters in the show I like. But for me, yes, Stella's he's top tier.
I'm very intrigued by Stella because obviously there's a lot of mystery, which we shouldn't actually have a lot of mystery around this character considering she is a main cast character. But she's a princess of another country, which is it's told at the very beginning. But then it's like if she's a princess, then you'd imagine that she'd have some level of protection, which you do see initially. She does have bodyguards. She does have like a private limo. And it's like, where did that all go? She goes into a school. You would imagine that she would be more of like a public figure. And they kind of bring it up in that whole episode with the scandal and whatnot. But it's like, but really, no one really cares. Like, this is the thing. Like, you'd imagine because she's a princess, she'd be hounded everywhere. And people do recognize her because the orphans recognize her.
I think it more comes down to, too, that once she's with Ike, he's kind of her protection as well. And like also like the town that's there at the school, they're just kind of used to it, if that makes sense.
I think as well, it's like she doesn't really give off the princess vibe, if that makes sense. Which I get it, maybe she's humble, but we don't know what her role is as a princess. We only get like a reference from her father literally right at the end when he announces, oh, would you be a part of my family, basically like a wedding proposal to her. And you know, the parents are talking.
This is why we need the rest published. Please, someone pick up this license. I'm begging you.
It's like we're not going to know otherwise, to be fair. Like there's just so many unanswered questions, and I don't think it's necessarily the anime's fault. And I say that because it's from a studio that's fantastic. The scenes in the show are fantastic. The art style, the animation's fantastic. It's just it wasn't given enough time. And I think obviously when your light novel is nerfed, in the case that there's no, you know, even the English light novel was only produced in 2020. Mind you, that would have been 5 years after the original release, or sorry, 6 years of the original Japanese release of the light novel, 5 years after the anime. So the fact that only got taken up after 5 years, it's almost shooting the anime in the foot. You know, because you're not going to get a second season if the light novel is not performing as well, which is unfortunate.
It's just making me so sad now.
It's just upsetting. I know on Kunai we don't really necessarily talk about it as much, but it is a very important thing within anime. I also think that obviously we talk about a lot of different things like ships and relationships between characters. Character design, I think for me, if we're kind of talking into that and then leading into art style animation, the character design for me was quite poor.
Oh really? See, I love the character design.
I get it. Like some bits were very interesting in the sense of the more wacky characters, like the student council and stuff like that. It kind of reminded me of like Kill la Kill. Like, you know how everything in Kill la Kill was like very diverse in terms of the way that the characters looked, but at the same time, when you look at the characters and you just erase their hairstyles and you just sort of change their hairstyles or whatever, they look exactly the same, which is always unfortunate for me. I know I've noticed anime like Hagun has this problem. A lot of anime from this era had this problem, and you kind of notice it within the crowds as well. If you look closely into the crowds, there was one scene
in the crowds I did notice it, but not so much with the main characters.
The main characters, some characters did look very varied. Like obviously the senseis, I just find that they kind of looked a bit generic though. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, you gotta remember too that they're, you know, technically for most of these shows wearing school uniforms too.
Correct.
They're all gonna look similar in those regards.
I wasn't necessarily talking about the clothes. I was talking about in terms of facial structure and in terms of, yes, body structure, they are looking quite different. I just found that it just felt very too familiar for me.
You're like, this is different, this is different, this is different, but they all look the same. No,
it's
different.
hard. No, I'm saying like they look the same in the sense that it's just very familiar. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't feel, there's something off. I can't explain it.
Yeah, so no, that, okay, so yeah, so that, so there was in just anime in general this time frame, yes, there were lots of just similar design. Overall, okay, yeah, especially like I said, and as much as I talk about how much I like them, I would say especially from Silverlink.
Yes.
Shows.
That is true. Like
especially
even if I'm looking at like a character like Ikki, like I don't like he to me could be any sort of generic.
He's your typical
sort of
Japanese anime main character protagonist.
Exactly. Like there's nothing interesting about his character design, and it's the same with Stella. I mean, like Stella, big tits and red hair. You know, like okay, cool, I get it. Like I understand, like it's.
But also at this time there weren't as many of her as there are now years later.
That is true, but I still find that I don't know.
Red hair, tsundere, yes, but her design specifically, not so much.
Okay, fair enough. I just find that it's just all too familiar, at least at that time, because I remember that
that's
era.
Your opinion. Like I said, I understand where you're coming from.
All right, fair. And that's sort of my opinions on it. I don't know what you kind of think about the sort of character design and whatnot.
I mean, I understand. Like you said, I understand where you're coming from. How like there's a lot of samey design across shows at this time. Overall, the design I think still obviously fits the series, just like it. I'm sure I would say the same thing about other shows of its ilk at the time. So like we touched on it at the beginning of the episode where I talked about how I like color palette and how colors of the characters themselves match their skills and abilities. So I've kind of already gone over that. So I'll just use that to go into the actual animation. I think the animation in the show is solid. That as much as I like it and I like Silverlink, there are some times though where I wish the animation could be better. A lot of the fighting animation for the most part is good, but again, there's parts where you can tell where they used editing tricks to get around certain things to kind of save money. Because I will say, obviously, this is not the biggest budget show. At a modest budget. So the animation overall is passable, but there are things that I would like to see done better.
Like I can tell you from now, like the more slice of life elements, like when they were in that sort of, I can only describe it as a Denny's, but when they were in that sort of Denny's situation, and there was just a scene where they're talking and they zoom out a little bit. It's not by much, but it's like their faces look just blank, and the animation is slacking there, and I'm like, bro, what the fuck is this? Like, it looked horrible.
I need to get this show on Blu-ray to see if they, do any of the Blu-ray touch-ups.
But that's the thing, you'd expect like something, because I'm watching it on High Dive, right? And High Dive does a really good job in terms of like fixing it up, in terms of like putting like the Blu-ray releases, especially on older shows, or giving us the uncensored versions that you'd find on the Blu-rays and stuff like that. When I was watching on High Dive, I didn't see that, so I don't know if they were using
I have a feeling they're probably
using
the original cast just to save money.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I'll look into it when I can. But like I said, the animation overall, it's passable. It's not bad. It is not bad animation, but it's not great animation. But to me, it's one of those, like, it's good enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense completely. Like, for me, one thing that I did notice was that there was a little bit of 3D animation in terms of like the battle scenes and stuff, but it kind of reminded me.
I think that might be where the Nexus part might have come in.
Maybe,
I'm not
but
as familiar with their stuff.
To be fair with you, like, Nexus to me seems like a sort of secondary studio in a lot of cases, because they don't. I think that's what they are. Yeah. No. But regardless, I think the 3D animation for the time. Bear in mind, this is 2015. It's still 3D. Still would have been quite in its sort of infancy. But it kind of reminded me of like the 3D animation you'd see in Yu-Gi-Oh. Like it wasn't that good.
Or kind of like some of the stuff that we saw that we talked about with Rail Wars.
Yeah, I would say so. I can give Rail Wars a pass because a lot of the stuff kind of blends in a little bit more, but this just felt like early sort of CG, because bear in mind that the way that the danger room is, right, is that it's I get it, but it looks fake. You know what I mean? Like, I think.
No, I get it. When you've got your more traditional 2D kind of anime character juxtaposed on this kind of rotating 3D background.
Correct.
Yeah, I get it. It's why I had so many transgressions when High School DD changed studios and went with Passion, which we've talked about Passion before. How to me, they're very hit and miss, some of the shows. Like, some of their shows are like superb animation, and other shows just kind of like, eh. And I remember when they did their first season of High School DD, how there was more of those moments where it was 2D characters on a like rendered background or maybe a painted background, and you could just tell the characters were floating. And that's kind of like, it reminds me of that.
Exactly. And another show that has that particular issue is Overlord.
Yes.
Where you had that fight with the dragon and stuff, and it kind of reminded me of that, and it freaked me out a bit, and I was like, this is horrible. I don't understand why they needed to have the 3D animation for the stage. They could have literally kept it 2D and it would have been fine. But I don't know if that's done to save time or save money. I'm not too. Other than that, I think I'm quite happy with like the art style animation.
It's one of those, it's not great, it's not bad, it's good enough.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I wholeheartedly agree with you.
All right, so what about, the opening and ending? How did you like both of those?
The opening and the ending, I liked the visuals. I thought the visuals were good, especially of the OP. The ending, yeah, also good as well. A tad ecchi on the ending specifically. I think the music behind it, I didn't understand.
Oh, don't you, dude? No. So literally, the OP for this show is one of my all-time favorite. Like, if
Really?
you actually go and if you go and you actually look up the lyrics to the song and everything too, it's freaking perfect. The ending, I'm kind of on.
Yeah, the
overall,
endings,
but
the ending's
this,
music wasn't
but
that good.
this OP for this show is literally one of my all-time favorites.
It doesn't match the show, Will. It just felt like this sort of 90s
What are you talking
sort
about?
of
It
intro.
freaking matches Ike.
No, it doesn't.
It's like his song.
I get it, and it's also a
Go
theme
and look
that
up the lyrics.
plays during
Go
his
and do it.
fights. But that's the thing. When I'm watching an anime and I'm seeing the OP, I don't care about the lyrics. And the lyrics were there actually.
This
in
OP,
the
this
anime.
OP gets me so hyped for the show.
I don't
Every
understand
time
how it
I
gets you
go and I
hyped.
look it up, it just makes me want to watch the show.
I don't get how it gets you hyped, because for me it actually dampened the show for me, because I was like, what the fuck is this weird anime 90s music? Like, it kind of reminded me of like I was watching the Big O or something like it. It just seemed horrible.
This just confirms that your bland English tastes
It has nothing to do with bland English taste.
are conflating your culture.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong, and you're wrong. And I'm have to defend myself here, because it was literally the shittest anime OP I've ever listened to in my life. And I was like, what
oh
is
my
this
god, you're
stupid
so
music?
wrong. It's
I'm right.
amazing. There's a reason why it gets played on like so many like song lists all the
Does
time.
it?
Dude.
I've never heard the song before,
dude.
and
Oh my
it
God.
sounds dog shit. I'm sorry to say that. It's horrible.
Oh,
It's literally
wow,
the worst.
You're killing me here, dude. Oh my god.
This is kunai,
This is
guys.
one of
This
the
is
best OPs
kunai.
ever.
You know what? I want the audience to decide. We'll probably do a poll on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, let us know, was the OP good or bad? And
This
then on the
OP
next
is
episode,
fire.
we'll let you know, Will. I think we'll have to agree to disagree on that.
Overall, though, OST is just kind of there.
Yeah, it's there every once in a
It's
while.
manageable. Yeah, it definitely wasn't a priority with the show, other than the OP, which is amazing. Voice acting. I don't really have many complaints with the voice acting. The voices all felt
I think
like
the voices were
they
good.
matched character. Granted, I've only heard the Japanese voices, so
Okay.
I can't comment on
I
the
think-
English. But like, to me, like, especially Stella, like, I'm gonna keep gushing on her. Her voice is perfect for the character.
And I agree with you. Stella's voice is perfect for the character. I think
I really liked ISA too. I really liked her, and especially like how the voice actor was kind of able to switch, do that little switch with her where she first like appears, she's kind of all flustered and shy and all that type of stuff. But when she has to get dirty, she has that kind of what's that? It's not evil. It's not conceited. I'm
Yeah, I
trying
know
to
what
think
you
of the
mean.
word
I
where
understand
like
what you're saying.
her voice switches to where it's like more matter of fact, more serious. Like her voice actress did a really good job.
I agree with you, and I think for me, the voice acting is not necessarily like top tier compared to other anime, especially for this
it's
time.
just good.
But it's good and it's serviceable. I think I obviously watched part of the English dub because every time when we talk about high dive, for some reason, it's just that English dub comes up first. But for me, the English dub, it was goofy. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't.
That tends
good.
to be the case with a lot of quote unquote older shows that are now getting newer dubs.
Yeah,
It
I don't know
seems to
why
be the
that
case.
is. It's odd as well because they changed the script so much, and I'm like, just leave it out as it is.
I could have some comments on that, but I don't want anyone, review bombing the show.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, if you want to listen to Will's comments, you can on X or Twitter. I'm gonna call it Twitter.
Yeah.
Fuck X.
I'm sorry. I don't have a filter. I can't help myself.
And I think it's fair because
I have a filter here with you.
yeah.
But my own personal stuff, like, it's what I need to add one of those disclaimers. These are my personal views. They do not, reflect the views of, the Get a Life podcast group or Kunai.
To be fair with you, I agree with where you're coming from. But anyway, besides the point, sound design, sound effects, pretty basic.
I was getting ready to say we'll kind of, I'll use that to roll into our gripes and grumbles. That's another one of my kind of lesser things with the shows, is that like the fights themselves are really cool, but like other than the characters talking, don't really get a lot of sound effects from like their abilities or their actual fighting themselves. They're making the contact. swords clashing, anything like, you don't get a whole lot of that, which is really odd in a show like this.
Yes, and I'm not too
So
sure
I
if that's
think
because the battles themselves are quite quick. That might be one of the reasons behind it. But
yeah, like I said, that's one of my gripes with the show. I wish that they had more of that, more punchiness, I guess would be the word I'm looking for. Other than the fight in the dojo, that fight has some really good, but it was also one of the longer fights in the show.
True,
so it could be part of it.
Mentioned my gripes and grumbles. To be fair with you, they kind of
we've kind of gone through it as we've been talking.
Yeah, and that whole discussion on second season, obviously I've mentioned I would like to see a second season. I think the reason being is because it's one of those shows similar to like
it sets up so much and you're like, where's the rest?
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's not a second season that I want to see because this show was so amazing. It's the second season I want to see because there's so much missing, and that frustrates me.
Yeah, I'm not going to say the show is amazing by any means, but it is one of my favorite shows. I would definitely easily put it, I would say, in my top, we'll say 40 or 50 shows, personally, just on a personal level. I would definitely put it in top 50 for
So who would you recommend the show to?
I would recommend this to anyone not turned off by ecchi. That would be the easy part. Even though there's not a lot of etchiness in the show, there's enough that I could see it turning some people off, especially just because of that first episode.
And which is true, because the first
other
episode
than that, I would
off.
recommend it to pretty much anybody.
Yeah, to be fair with you, the first episode did sort of turn me off, and in all essence, it's not as ecchi as a show as like Rail Wars. You know what I mean? Like Rail Wars is more ecchi.
Yeah, like I said, probably the most ecchi parts of this are going to be the first episode, the episode where Stella gets sick, and then the ED of the show itself.
Correct.
That's really about. And I'll say, to a minor extent, the part with Ikki helping to train Ayase, where he's like moving her legs and like squeezing her thigh muscles to get her legs in the right position.
But that's literally
kind of
episodes,
played up. Like you said, that's really it when you really think about it with this show.
And I agree. And it's not. I wouldn't consider this as an ecchi show. It has ecchi elements. I would say that I would not recommend this show to anyone. I know that's really harsh, but I think as a show, I don't know what
we're just like literally like just two sides of the coin.
It's interesting
because
it's like I don't know what the show has to offer. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it seems like a genuine waste of time to watch. I would just recommend, if you can get your hands
for me,
on...
like, for me, I love, we've talked about it before on the show. Like, I like just sometimes just dumb fun. You said it yourself. Like, when you defend, Jujutsu Kaisen for me, you like a show where you can just turn your brain off and just enjoy it. That's what this show is for me.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean,
that's why I would recommend if you're looking for a show just to have fun with.
True, I think I do agree with you on that. If you want to turn off your brain, then yeah. But even for me, I could not turn off my brain to enjoy the show. Like,
you're killing me, man.
It's hard to explain.
I love the show. Like I said, it's not one of my all-time favorites, but it is a show that I will gladly talk about to anyone anytime.
Like, look, I get it. Like, I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy the show. I did enjoy the show, but it was just such a hard watch in the sense that, and we get this every sort of time, every once in a while on Kunai, we get this where there will be a show where, if it was, I don't know if we've kind of had this, I think this may be the first time on Kunai with you that we had that sort of a thing, but I know in the past there'll be episodes that I suggest to Kevin and he'll be like, bitch, this was like literally the hardest show to watch because I didn't enjoy it, but I wanted to have a great discussion on it. And I think obviously Kunai is all about discussion and having like fair and proper discussions and whatnot, and I think we did a good job on that.
No, I mean, that's why that's why we do this, to 100%. Because we might have some listeners that haven't ever watched the show, and maybe some lean more your way on average, some might lean my way on average. So like people that like my opinions, maybe they'll check it out. Maybe people who like your opinions be like, maybe that show isn't for me. So
and that's another thing that I was kind of getting at. Like, the reason why I say that, not to necessarily waste your time with the show, unless you've watched a lot of anime, right? And there's like literally, you wanted something to, as you mentioned, turn your brain off and just watch a show just for the sake of watching a show, then yeah, give this one a go. But if you're someone that's new to anime, don't watch this show. And I say that wholeheartedly. There's so much better anime out there. I find that someone that's new to anime would enjoy a lot more. And I think this show might give the wrong impressions of anime to someone who's maybe never watched anime before, only because of its plot issues, lack of character development. Like, there is a lot of plot holes that I think can be overlooked by someone who's been watching a ton of anime, but someone who's new might not get that.
I understand what you're saying, but like you said, I also chalk it up to how don't have further seasons to go off of. 'Cause there's other shows too where like early seasons have been great, but later seasons have fallen off and I've stopped watching. And then there's been other shows where I haven't liked, the first even few episodes, but then they get better later and people are like, you got to go back, you got to watch the rest of the show. And then I end up really liking the show. So it can go either way. So I said, I'll chalk part of that up to that. I understand what you're saying, but I really think a lot of it comes down to the fact that, we've just been robbed of so much from this series.
Correct. And obviously that's literally the biggest major flaw with this show is just the fact that there isn't enough source material that is readily available in terms of in English. There isn't much hype in terms of the show because of that whole source material issue. And as you mentioned, like the fact that that doesn't exist does make it a very hard watch, because even the people that watch it and they're really excited and they're like, yes, I love this show. It's unfortunate because they're gonna have to deal with the fact that there is no second season and there won't be a second season, unfortunately. And that's always a very difficult thing to sort of suggest a show, knowing the fact that there is no opportunity for a second season and no opportunity for even people to read the source material legally.
Like I said, even comparing it, like I said, to Asterix War, which I liked this better than Asterisk War. I actually really like that series too. And even though the book series is now finished both in Japanese and English, it never got another season, even though it was supposed to have. So I don't even know what's going on. Like, this is just a really weird time in general with anime, And like there's other shows, in series from this time frame that have continued on, but we've talked about earlier, some of them have changed studios and now they're not as popular, or they've changed animation styles. This is just a weird era in general for anime.
I agree. And all in all, I think that was a fantastic episode of Kunai. Like I mentioned, not every episode we're going to be sort of having an agreement on, and that's a good thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to have this episode of Kunai.
Man, when you told me you were excited recording this, I'm like, yes, he's going to love the show. And then you come in here and you break my damn heart.
No, that's the thing. That's what Kunai is about. And I remember like Kevin back in the day where there'll be a suggestion, and like, for example, I did the same thing to Kevin when he suggested Mao-sama. I hated season 1 of Mao-sama. And then it took me 10 years to be like, oh, actually, I love Mao-sama. You know what I mean? So maybe a given time...
You're ridiculous.
I might actually change my opinion, but it makes a good point. What do you guys think? The audience, you guys are the most important people. We do this show for you guys as much as we do it for ourselves. So please let us know what you guys think on Twitter at Gal Podcasts. Additionally,
they can also, if they ever have anything to say to me, they can definitely say it directly to me. If they don't want to do it, put it out there on Twitter. My DMs are pretty much always open too.
Alternatively, you can speak to us directly on our Discord page, which is found at getlifepodcast.com/Discord. We've got an anime channel we can ship posts and do all those discussions there, or you can give us a sort of direct comment on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, remember also to give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and on iTunes, because when you do that, it bumps up the show, it shares it with more people. Be sure to do that, guys. And big thanks to our sponsors, Crunchyroll and Sugoima. Also, once again, big thanks to High Dive. They're not sponsoring the show, but without High Dive, we wouldn't be able to watch this show legally. So GG for actually taking the show on and actually doing a dub as well, because that's making the show more accessible. And hopefully, maybe in the future, they could sort of fund a second season. We don't know, but they could do that.
So Bish, I've got one more question for you.
What's the question?
What episode what show are we going to be covering next?
So this one is interesting. We're going to be covering Erased. It's an interesting one as well, because originally Erased was Joe's suggestion and we never got to watch it on Kunai, which for
Speaking of which, have you checked out any of the live action of it?
It was on Netflix, wasn't it?
It was like,
I think it still is, actually.
I don't know. I'll have to double check. I haven't looked in a while, because I remember I watched the very first episode because I just wanted to check it out, and I actually really liked it. And you know me, normally I hate live action, like anything that came from, manga or anime. But when I saw the first episode, I said, this looks promising. I really need to check out more. But anyway, we'll definitely
discuss it.
Cover the anime.
We'll cover the anime and its elusive ending, which is, I think that's just the ending portion of Kunai, which is usually quite short. That is going to be quite long, because obviously that discussion, I think it's obviously very popular on the internet to have that sort of discussion about how Erased ended, but we'll talk about that in the next episode, and I'm very excited to talk about it, because it was an episode we were supposed to do, but then it got cancelled for one reason or another. And I think this episode, sort of this year of episodes for Kunai would be marking its 10th anniversary. So we kind of wanted to go through all of the old episodes, all the cancelled episodes, and sort of give them a second chance. Erased being one of them. We did Assassination Classroom, which, believe it or not, was a cancelled episode. And I think maybe in the future, I think the other two cancelled episodes, one of them was Kill la Kill, and another one was Neon Genesis Evangelion. So,
oh wow.
Both of them because they weren't
man.
legally available, but now that they are, I can actually go and talk about them. So maybe sometime in the future, hopefully to do Kill la Kill. I'm thinking we'd have to do Eva at one point.
Well, I mean, if you've paid attention to my Twitter at all, you know, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Anyway, that being said, Will, where can they find you?
I'm still fighting to get my actual handle. If you look up Yam Sensei, that's, you know, you'll find me, but my actual @ is @Yam Starch, which we talked about that before. You know, I have that handle thanks to Disgaea, but it's, you know, @Yam YAM Starch STARC. Otherwise, you can find me as Yam Sensei.
Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode, and yeah, we'll see you next time for Erased. Bye.
Bye.